Hey the rulers, DMO73 here, bringing you a showdown between myself on Ki Lua Death Scythe Control versus Ren and their Blue Ulga list. Let's go ahead and jump right in.
This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for products, and FowlLibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists.
As well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock.
Class is in session.
So as we get started here, just want to give you another reminder that Odyssey Games does have their pre-orders up right now for Crimson Moon Battleground. You can check that out in the description below to go make sure you are all set for that set, especially since spoilers have just started at the time of this video coming out. So we have myself on the left playing Ki Lua Control. It is a 5-color pile. Well, I guess 4 color. There's not really a lot of blue in it. Making use of some of the new tools that have been granted, as well as just like Ki Lua's more control heavy package with things like Megiddo, to be able to control the board state, as well as Divine Lightning to be able to kind of do during the end phase. And Ren is playing a Blue Ulga list that is very less replicant heavy. It's mainly speaking to the idea of the fact that, like, with Sherry, you don't really need a lot of many copies of the other replicants because Sherry can just constantly be recycling them. And instead, we're playing more of like a Prisia box style list, with our Prisia instead being Generate Replicant as opposed to the Prisia Resonator. And so that's kind of how the decks differ a little bit from previous versions we've seen before, and so we'll have to see which comes out on top. Finishing up mulligans here. Beginning of game triggers start to go into effect, and then we have a Rogue Spectator as well as a Magog straight out the gate for Ren. So as a control deck, I mean, that's one of the best things about Magog is that it's just like a really good filter essentially every turn. It feels much similar to like having the Mooj Dart tap effect just on an addition that you can get multiple times a turn, and you start the game with it, so that feels very, very good. Callstone Pass. We do see even though we don't have a recovery, we are going to go ahead and use Magog here just to have a little bit more filtering, which is an interesting decision for sure. I feel like there's not, unless the hand is truly that bad post mulligans, which is, I guess, one of the nice things about having that ability. But just gonna see a Callstone at that point in time. One of the reasons why we're playing Child of Rain as opposed to Child of Famine, like we've seen before, is the fact that Child of Rain's God's Art can be used to produce will for Dissonance of Rain, which is a melody or music, and that's a very, very good tool. Like, it's a very, very good tool, and just being able to always have it out open even on turn 0 is particularly good. At the end of the turn, we're going to go ahead and filter into red with Light Moon Child just to go ahead and burn Ren for 600, as well as draw into another card. Just because Ki Lua is a control deck doesn't mean it's not going to apply pressure. It does have really good ways to be able to kind of keep its hand advantage up because of Ki Lua's ice counter ability while still making good progress. Calling a stone. But yeah, it is truly a 5-color pile. Ship the turn there. We see a Sword of Progression just to draw a card during Ren's turn, so that he has access to 1-drop Sherry, which is good. Don't know if he's going to make use of it this turn, but we'll see. Even then, Sword of Progression is at 1 cast now, so we're building towards being able to get that Excalibur, or that Genesis. We do see the Sherry here. The question is, are we going to see it cast during main phase here? It would make sense, especially since he's on coin. He'd still have 2 will available, get a Black Silence there, just to kind of get the Scarlet. Feels like it would be worth your time, but he might be trying to save more will for more interaction during my turn, which would be understandable as well. Does decide to pass it. We see we're both running Prisia box style ideas, him with Generate Replicant and me with Prisia. Then we're going to see Keeper of Friends start to get online there. Do it a second time just to get those counters up and not waste the will. Draw into turn. The Darkness Moon Fragment, a little bit of filtering, but we know what's on top, so we're just going to keep those where they are. Being a little bit proactive here, using filter from Light Child to filter into white to go ahead and cast Diversity Palace. Now, the reason is because one of the win cons of this deck is to be able to reanimate a dinosaur, and the best dinosaur ever is Zeus Alice. So you can do some pretty cool things with that at instant speed. Ryan says, no, I'm not. That's not resolving. It's going to go to graveyard, which I say, yeah, that makes sense. I have to try to play it eventually. So it makes sense that this would get hit now. Do see an end of turn spinning Aqua Soul trying to buy back that sort of progression. Debating whether or not I want to try to fight over him at this point in time. We're going to go ahead and see a Ki Lua Fossil Girl in the city shooting the Magog now, so that even if he tries to go cast Sword later, it will get RFG'd. And we do see a feasting 100 Years of Wizardry, a nice little body, Wall of Wind, even with just one Magog. And that is enough to win the fight here. And so he's going to get to put a body on board going into his turn, tap me out into his turn, as well as having access to another sort of progression. So honestly, a very good sequencing there for Ren in terms of playing through to be able to get some pressure in on his turn as well. These control mirrors, control matchups can go really, really long, and so having some way to be able to establish board presence during your opponent's turn is really, really important, and Ren's done a really good job here of finding the opportunity with feasting. Now, the weirdness is that he does, that Scheherazade does cost 2. It will be able to grab an Imul now. In this situation, in the previous Ulga deck, it might have been a case where we cast the Sherry, get an Imul, Callstone, produce extra will, but we are not playing any of those types of stones, those sunstones, because we're relying so less on Imul in this deck. And so just Calling Stone makes a lot more sense, Calling Stone and passing, and then swinging in for 4 with feasting to go ahead and take us down to 16 or to 36. Clarifying exactly when that feasting came into play from when the last sequencing is, and then yes, we're going to go ahead and swing in for 4, take me down to 36, so 36, 34, and a pass turn. With the will coin down, Ki Lua Control is definitely feeling a little bit better here, because now I'm going to start being up on will. I'm also playing Rebuilding the Death Scythe, which can ramp me even higher ahead, and so, little piddly damage from a feasting is not particularly damaging, and if Ren does decide to try to commit to something here, we probably can do something to be able to mess with it. Another spinning Aqua Soul here, coming to try to grab the other sword of progression back from graveyard. Just take both of his swords and put them back in his hand, and we say, you know what, that's okay, we're gonna let that happen, that's fine. And then on his turn before recovery, we're gonna see before draw for turn, we're gonna see a sword of progression. So now we're up to 3. Very soon going to be able to contract into Genesis. As I said before in the podcast earlier this week, you can get to Genesis very quickly if you're being pretty aggressive with the swords and have good ways to recycle them. And so also chooses to bounce the feasting back to his hand just to have another kind of like tool in the toolbox here to try to force something to resolve, which is pretty good. The other thing to note is that he does have the child to be able to stop the God's Art, so that can be pretty helpful in winning a sequence to not get, outed by Child of the Light Moon. So that's also something I have to be considering of on the Ki Lua side here, is like, at what point in time, do I try to maybe force out a cancel of the Darkness Child God's Art so that I can get Light Child to resolve? Like, what's the sequence there? We'll have to see exactly what kind of plays through. Justice hate to use Magog there during the main phase, and then we are going to see a pay for 1 replicant Scheherazade. Can get him a 3-drop replicant. There aren't any. It can only get him Imul, or I guess it technically could get him Zeus Alice if he was playing Zeus Alice, but he's not. So in response to her effect, we are going to see attempting to use Child of the Light Moon here. We're just going to accept that we might get canceled. Doesn't choose to let that resolve, though, which I think is very interesting. And now that he's cast his one spell, we're going to go ahead and say, in response to her enter effects, we're going to try to put in Witch of the Fallen Kingdom. Witch of the Fallen Kingdom here, just trying to say you can't search. So you can tuck stuff back on the bottom of your deck as much as you want, but you're not going to get much value off of searching your main deck. Now, that being said, he could still grab a replicant from the sideboard, which we do have them here. So I think that's a little bit of a misplay from Scheherazade, from Ren. That's the nice part about Scheherazade's effect, is that she can grab stuff from the sideboard. I think just a little bit of a misplay there of Ren not being as familiar with the deck, because we are playing, to Ren's credit, Ren has been practicing this deck for a couple weeks, but it is a deck that we built at Ruler School and gave to Ren to be able to play, and so remembering that there is a Imul in the sideboard to be able to grab, I think just eluded him at that moment. Just thought about trying to search the deck. Filtering into red, using Child of the Light Moon at the end of turn to go ahead and burn him for another 6. And the whole sequence here is we're just trying to do kind of as much as possible here while he's under Child of the Light Moon, just so we just don't have to worry about it. Same kind of thing, we're going to try to go for a Ki Lua Girl of the City to pop them Gog. And says, I don't have to cast a spell, I will use Persephone, and Persephone will put that spell back in your hand. So a nice little remand there to stop me from getting that to resolve. Going into my turn, I am no longer protected by Child of the Light Moon's God Art, but still have 5 stones and lots of resources to be able to make use of. I do know that there are 2 Sword of Progressions in hand, so that's one thing to keep in mind there with kind of advanced knowledge. We know that there's at least 1, if not 2. You also know that there's a Feasting in hand. So while Ren has 6 cards in hand, we know what, well, predictably we know what 3 of them are, although he has tucked a card with Magog, so we might have chosen to lose one of them. The Feasting at this point might not feel as good of a card, particularly because unless he can get some more Magogs, it's just a Wall of Wind, and I start to have enough will to be able to easily pay for that regardless. End of his turn, we're going to see a Little Maria Archaic Legacy. Probably going to call Sword of Progression, either Sword of Progression or Sword of Regression here. The biggest weakness, though, is that he's still going to get rid of that Darkness Switch, and base green by itself does not have the best spot removal. It can bounce, sure, but if I have will, I'm pretty comfortably able to just recast it before the search resolves. So we've got to be very, very careful with how this works. Move to recovery. Seeing a Culling Stone and a Knowledge Stone. Nice 5-color stone there. Going for a Generate Replicate, and then he will be holding priority in just a moment to try to get rid of that Darkness Switch, just putting the Generate Replicant on the field, and then saying, right, now I have to, before this resolves, also answer that Darkness Switch, and so we're going to hold priority, and try to go to Sword of Progression, which is the 4th mode, so it can contract here. So it's going to draw and bounce and contract. It's not trying to cancel anything, at which point in time we say, well, we're going to fight over that now. And so in's going to come the Ki Lua spell here to try to target Magog so that it cannot it won't be able to contract. We see a Descent of Ulga, which is a nice little Wall of Wind here. We know there's a Feasting in hand, and we know there's another Sword of Progression in his hand. We are now out of Light Moon Child, and so we're going to have to fight through this somehow. So at this point in time, we're going to build a nice little chase here, see exactly how all of this is going to resolve out. Now we do have plenty of will, so there's a world where we just like pay the will for descent so that we don't have to burn another card. Choose to let descent resolve, and we will pay the 1. Still trying to resolve the Ki Lua. You see that feasting gets burned here, but still only has attacks of 1. We go, but in response to her effect, if we're going to spend 1 will anyway, let's put a Lorite on the field and cancel her enter effect. So Lorite's going to stop. The Ki Lua spell's going to get to destroy Magog. He's going to choose not to filter once before that happens. Or I guess this is the 3rd sword. I apologize. So he's only going to draw and bounce. He needs to cast the 4th to be able to contract. But it does get RFG'd. Even if he could contract, because there's no Magog, he wouldn't be able to contract anyway. But then before the generate replicant resolves, we're going to recast the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom to stop him from searching. So this is what I mean in terms of like green doesn't have any good spot removal outside of, for this deck outside of the bounce, and the bounce isn't super great when I have plenty of will to be able to recast the stuff that he's trying to bounce that's causing him a problem. We are at 5 stones, so our witch is going to get us a second witch. We're specifically just going to get Witch of the Pointy Hat. We're not playing a black witch in the sideboard. And so we're just going to have more bodies to be able to interact with stuff. Tucking a card back to the bottom with Scheherazade. At that point in time, we're going to get to draw a turn. Doing another keep the faith. Sorry, not keep the faith. Pricia's Big Show to be able to kind of get up to 4. We really want to be able to get up to 5, so that way we can grab a Garion. Garion is pretty backbreaking because so many of Olga's cards are just 1-drops. It really is a majority of the deck, and so if we can get access to a Garion, it would be very, very good. You do see that Ren is playing the Valentina in his hand. He's got it in hand, which is nice, just to be able to steal the whole board, right? So next turn he'd be able to steal the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom and then go in for it. Play another big Ki Lua spell just to remove some ice counters and draw an extra card. Call Stone with Ki Lua, because we're setting up or building the Death Scythe. You see we have 2 of those in hand. See an end of turn spinning Aqua Soul. Getting tucked back to the bottom with Scheherazade. Draw for turn. A second Little Maria does not help us very much here. Certainly an uphill battle here. We could commit, if we hit a 3rd blue stone, we could commit to the Valentina here, but we don't really have much in hand to be able to protect it. We do have the ability to stop it from being shot with Darkness Moonchild. We do see the 3rd blue source there, so we can go in. There's a Replicant Imel, chooses to ship that to the bottom of the deck. Paying 3. Valentina, owner of the theater. So to steal the whole board. We have plenty of will, but not much in terms of ways to interact with that. So we're going to go ahead and see that Memory of Worlds get burned here. Now we know he can't cast it again this turn, so we're just going to say like, hey, let's just get that out of here. I don't want that to resolve. You can try to resolve it later, just not now, because I want to try to hopefully kill you before that gets to come back in and steal my board. With its 1,000 defense, even the Predator contract, like with Mastery, doesn't have enough will to kill it, which is a little unfortunate. We're going to block the Sherry with the Lorite, so that's fine. Going to block the Feasting with my Pointy Hat, which means they trade. And then in response to the Little Maria swing, we're going to see an Awakened repairing the Death Scythe. So the nice thing about the way this kind of works is that it's been ruled that when a J ruler under contract dies, the ruler comes back into the field recovered. So there's some really cool shenanigans you can do as Ki Lua to like kill your own Death Scythe and then immediately recontract using Mastery into Predator. We still have an ice counter on it, so that doesn't super help us right now, but it is something that's available. Friends asking what exactly Death Scythe rebooted does. So that's totally fine. Death Scythe rebooted gets to come in. It's going to probably draw. He's going to ramp us a stone, draw us a card, and get a bunch of counters. But because that stone was a 4C stone, we can stack the triggers so that the 4C stone goes first. So we draw a card we actually want off the Death Scythe, and now it has 10 +1/+1 counters, as well as the 1 ice counter that gets shifted from the ruler. Then we're going to go ahead and block the Little Maria and say adios. And on our turn, we've got 2,100 damage worth of damage represented, as well as the ability to go into Ki Lua, or sorry, go into a very easy Prisia for really anything. We can use it for another Black Witch to get swiftness and flying to everything, in which they can swing. We can use it to get Garion. We can use it to get Grand Leon. Like, we're pretty secure in our ability to close out this game. This is what I mean in terms of like, even though we've been fighting over stuff with things like, you know, Grand Leon and stuff to be able to pitch from hand, like even that is pretty helpful to just be able to get his life total lower so we can go in for a turn that's pretty safe, right? Taking him down to 1,100 with the Death Scythe repaired. We can go ahead and hit him for another 400 with which is the Fallen Kingdom. We're gonna go ahead and just do a keep the faith here just to get up to 5. There's also a neat trick where if we had Kingdom of Diversity Light Palace, you could like swing with something low. He chooses to block, and then you Prisia to cheat in Zeus Alice and suddenly make the thing that's hitting him a 29,000. That's a way to also close out the game very quickly. Taking him down to 700 with the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom. At that point in time, we are going to go ahead and just choose to cast the Prisia Seeker of Friends, who is going to go get us everyone's favorite big 5-drop boy, just to, at this point in time, lock him out of the game. Garion, and say 1-drops do not matter. You are not going to get to... Okay, so moving into game 2, Ren has decided to take the play. This kind of makes sense in the sense that it will be more activations of Ulga before, you know, I get 2 turns, which is an interesting idea because you can activate it once during. You'll potentially be able to get 2 activations. I guess it's the same either way, but in the matchup, I don't think necessarily going first versus second matters too much. I think there was still a lot of times where both players were being a little bit more just where we were just kind of taking our time, and so having the coin in those situations isn't super huge. The only reason I could see taking the coin might be better is because of the fact that Ren is playing Feasting, and so and starting the game with an addition, so like Feasting is kind of immediately live, but I think it could kind of go either way. See a 4C. Keeping that card on the top. And then we're going to go ahead. Oh, we were thinking about maybe just immediately grabbing that Sherry back to our right to the hand, right off the gate. But it seems like we're going to just leave it on field for right now. See a pass turn. Magic Stone of the Chaos Moon. And probably just a pass after the 4C trigger. See, and now the Magog is going to come in. We're going to go ahead and draw that Sherry. Ship a dead card out to the bottom. Now there's a world where, like I've said before, we wait until his turn to go ahead and cast this sort of progression that he's kind of projecting. Yeah, there's the sort of progression. We wait till his turn so that Sherry only costs 1, and we did save the Ki Lua Fossil Girl here in this instance to be able to pop the Magog and then get that sort of progression out of the way. This is one of the environments where I'm like, yeah, so this is kind of why I think going second might have been better, is so that he would have maybe had some will to be able to punish that early Ki Lua, whereas it was pretty safe for me to take that action because he was tapped out and I still had a coin available. So the question here in this kind of game too is not that we're down a game, is how aggressive does he wants to be, right? There's a world where you just kind of start throwing down sort of progressions to get out Genesis early, because there's not really much that Ki Lua can do. But the weakness here against that for Ki Lua is if I have Predator, not only do I get rid of the Magog, but Divine Lightning can stop him from contracting. So that's like a really weird kind of moment. I will say though, if the Ki Lua deck is going for the Death Scythe line and you see me kind of call stone with Ki Lua, then that might be like the turn to try to push in for a Genesis, because you're not going to have to worry about Divine Lightning nearly as much. But we are going to go ahead and try to see that 1-drop Replicant Scheherazade gets us a Scarlet from the sideboard. So we've got a couple things on board. Scarlet is also a very good tool in this matchup to be able to spot remove those Witch of the Fallen Kingdoms off the board, since it has precision. So that can certainly be helpful. See a Call Stone. We are going to Call Stone with the Ki Lua. So this is what I mean. Like, if we had a bunch of sort of progressions, this feels like a turn where we might just kind of like try to force into it. I think, although we don't have a Magog, that's the biggest weakness here. Because of the errata on sword, you have to have a Magog in order to be able to contract, which is probably also one of the reasons that as the Ki Lua player in this instance, I feel comfortable trying to go for an early Death Scythe, simply because, you know, I don't have to worry about being punished by a contracted sort of progression. We're going to go ahead and see an end of the book and holding priority to tuck a card face down, using end of book to go ahead and move the bottom card of his deck back to his top and draw a card. So we're going to be able to get that Magog back, which is pretty nice. Probably going to see that almost immediately get cast as well. End of the turn here. We're going to go ahead and try for a Repairing the Death Scythe. See if we can get into a Death Scythe rebooted and try to be a little bit more aggressive in our play line here. Ren does have the second sort of progression here to be able to cancel it, draw a card, and kind of replace itself. And then before draw on my, or after draw before recovery, we're going to go ahead and use that Child of Rain to make Dissonance of Rain. And I believe he calls 1-drop non-resonator spells. I think the idea here was to try to like maybe mess with me being able to play Priscia this turn or something like that. Or Big Show this turn. If I had had some more will during recovery, I think that might have been a better idea. Or if he'd had some hand knowledge, maybe. But it certainly does make... It's certainly an option that he could take. One thing that you could do with Dissonance of Rain against Priscia box decks is you cast Dissonance of Rain in response to the first Priscia Seeker of Friends or Big Show, because then like the Big Show's on the chase, so they can't like recast it immediately. So instead of like will sinking 5 will into it, they only get the 1. Trying to think about if we're just going to call Stone Pass. It does ultimately seem like that is what's happened. Ren goes to generate replicants, and that's when we throw down a Witch of the Fallen Kingdom. He's tapped out for it, so we're going to stop him from being able to search. And now next turn, we're going to have to try to fight to kill that Scarlet so that it can't just immediately kill the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom, and then you can continue to search. Scarlet going to come in here to try to kill Witch of the Fallen Kingdom. Like we said, we'll respond by attempting to use Grand Leon to shoot it for 600. In response, we're going to see a Feast Sing to try to tax me for 1. Holding priority there. We're going to try to bait out. We start to go for Light Child, but we're going to go ahead and try to bait out the God Art of the Ulga Moonchild or Sunchild to just cancel the shooting of it with the Darkness Moonchild, at which point we're going to then go ahead and use the Light Moonchild to say, like, look, you've cast all the cards you're going to cast for this turn. I really want this Scarlet to die, and I want you to not be able to put any more pressure on me this turn. All that resolves. We're going to go ahead and pay the 1 for the Feasting. With Grand Leon to shoot it. There is a world where we should have probably just tried to pay the 1 for the Feasting, but the idea being that we're going to try to go for the Light Child God's Art kind of line there to just in case he has other stuff that we can use. Although, you know, in hindsight, that would have made him burn even more cards. So maybe that would have been the better line. Shares that effect here to tuck something back on the bottom of the deck. The sorted progression there, setting up for an end of book to be able to bring it back to hand. And especially since there's no Child of the Light Moon God Art left to deal with, that kind of can just sit there as long as he wants to be able to set up like an end of the book into something. Like this end of the book's going to bring that sorted progression back to his hand. Which point we say, no thank you. We're going to go ahead and Fair Spell the end of book. It's going to resolve. And all of this was at the end of my turn going into his turn. Down comes Mamu, so Ren's going to be able to buy back any card they want from the grave. Would have been honestly kind of better to have left the sort of progression on the bottom here at that point in time, but Ren was trying to go for the end of book, so that makes a lot of sense. And so kind of got double punished here by not having a good target for Mamu at that point. We see a Lorite come down to stop the Mamu. And a Persephone is going to come down to try to stop the Lorite. Which we say that's okay. We'll just recast the Lorite here. Make you burn through more cards. At which point in time the Mamu is going to just fizzle. Have its ability canceled. We're going to dig a little bit more here. We see there's the second Persephone, but that really won't help much at all here. There is another Magog, so there's something to be said about maybe playing that just to help fix your hand a little bit more. Not seeing a lot of draw power come out of Ren's deck at this moment. Yeah, the second Magog's going to come down here. Leaving them with just Persephone left in hand. Swing in for 6 with Scheherazade. We'll block for 1 with Lorite. Okay, that damage has been done. Swing in for 4 with Feasting. We'll take it. Go down to 32. And then since the Scheherazade has already taken 1 damage from the Lorite at that point in time, we can use Grand Leon to finish it off, which is really nice to just no longer have to worry about that on the board. See, we do have access to a Megiddo. This feels very good. There is a world where we probably should just cast the Megiddo now while Ren's tapped out, but we are going to go for a Diversity Palace instead. With having access to a Divine Lightning in hand, going for a Megiddo right now is probably my best bet in terms of like just really establishing the board state, because it would clear both of these guys off the board. If Ren does commit a new creature, it would be able to shoot it and draw me a card. Ren probably has minimal resources at that point, and if they do have a resource, it would just immediately like get burned, so they have 0 cards in their hand, which then makes Magog significantly worse. Another Mamu is the top deck there, getting to buy back any card in their graveyard. Probably the end of book might be the best choice here to be able to buy back this sort of progression. Scheherazade also could be a good grab. Ends up deciding to grab the Scarlet, which makes a little bit of sense to try to get rid of that Wish of the Fallen Kingdom. With no Darkness Will available, you know, if they went for the Scheherazade would have to shuffle the Scarlet back into the deck, and you can't search your deck, so then you don't have an access to it. So Mamu to just grab Scarlet so that we have a way to get rid of this Wish of the Fallen Kingdom is a good bet. Oh, but then we ended up shipping it away anyway. And we did draw into a sort of progression, so that's pretty good. Really starting to run low on resources here. We're going to have to go ahead and buy into the next Magog to see what else we can top deck into there. Does see, looks like a Generate Replicant. Or perhaps a Persephone, which not without having any kind of darkness well right now. That's really unfortunate. Gonna go ahead and swing in with Mamu, trying to hit 7 after attack declaration, but before blocks, we're gonna send in that Megiddo to try to hit the whole board for 8. Now we could see that another Persephone come down here. Ultimately, we are going to see a Sword of Progression here to recycle, cancel, and bounce my Witch of the Fallen Kingdom, which is pretty solid. Letting that resolve, unfortunately. Let's see, now the hand I think is double Persephone. No, it's an end of book. Double checking graveyard here. Swing in for 4, take it. We're going to go ahead and see a pre-recovery big show. Finally getting that train kind of started. With Diversity Palace on fields, there's a world where we just try to go for some kind of Zeus Alice line just to finish off things. We still need to find it though. Priscia being in hand certainly helps because we can get up to having 3, for 4 will here in the main phase, we can get up to Zeus Alice. It's just a matter of then being able to kill with it. But we could banish a stone and then we'd have a resonator in addition, a chant, and a stone in graveyard because of that spirit stone. And then at that point in time, the Zeus Alice would be able to just swing in the air with herself as an eternal resonator with 29,000 attack, and we can finish the game off that way. It really comes down to, would we also have some form of interaction left in hand to be able to stop the addition destruction at that point? So we are going to see Priscia's big show here go to 2. Priscia's big show go to 3. For 1, we go for a pumpkin, Witch of the Fallen Kingdom, which we're at 5 stones, so we can go get Pumpkin Witch. Although we don't really need it. I think I'm missing the line here about just banishing a stone to make the Zeus Alice have the swiftness. Ren, however, is pretty well positioned for what's in hand to deal with either of my lines here. Has end of book to be able to spot remove the addition, or Persephone if I get too greedy on trying to cast something, to prevent me from being able to cast twice in one turn. Do go in for the Priscia's big show. We are told that is fine. We get to go in and search the deck, and at that point in time, we have Zeus Alice, who counts as all races. So with Diversity Palace, as we've seen before, I think at this point in time, it's like 296 races, so everyone gets plus 29,600. And so just a single thing being there is absolutely lethal. End of book does cost 2. So there's exactly 2 will here. We are seeing it. A Memory of Worlds does not help us here, though. Or no, it only costs 1. Memory of Worlds would not help us for the same reason that a Persephone did not help Ren the few times it's been used, because I just had the extra will to be able to pay for it. So even if I used Memory of Worlds here, it would just be able to be recast. To be able to get at least some kind of value off of the Zeus Atlas this turn, we are going to go ahead and banish the Spirit Stone to draw another card, so leaving ourselves at a higher card advantage than Ren. And we are now at a Stone, a Resonator, an Addition, and a Chance in graveyard. So now Zeus Atlas has all of the simple skills: Eternal, Swiftness, Flying, Precision, First Strike, and Drain. So we're just going to crack him over the face. We're going to hit the Mamu for 1,000 just to take that off the board as one less thing for him to be able to crack back with. We're really just kind of cut their resources down. Swing for 3 at the Mamu because Pumpkin Witch is bigger than Mamu, just to put 300 damage onto it. Swing for 7 at Feasting with Priscia, and then we can use good old Grand Leon to shoot Mamu for 600 after it's already taken that damage. Draw a card to replace it, get ourselves down to 1 ice counter, and completely clear Ren's board, leaving him with just a top deck. And even pre-recovery, not able to do any more filtering. So we'll be able to see a total of 4 cards this turn, or 3 cards this turn after his draw, or after their draw, pardon me. Forgetting to recover the Magogs. Catching it there. Ships away the 3rd Magog. Doesn't help much here. Let's see what else we get off of the next draw. A Persephone being hard cast here isn't bad, simply because it can destroy something and then draw a card. But you do have to pay attention to be able to protect yourself. In comes Valentina, puppet owner of the theater, to take all of this stuff. Now we start to go for Divine Lightning, but it won't do anything. It won't actually kill the Valentina because she has 1,000 defense. It won't turn off her ability to steal stuff because it's an enter effect already on the chase. Like, really unfortunate that we just lost everything like that so quickly. Now keep in mind that Zeus Atlas on Ren's side of the field does not have all of those abilities because they do not have a Stone, an Addition, a Resonator, and a Chance in their graveyard. So just an 8/8 right now, but is stopping me from being able to search, which means if I top deck another Priscia, it doesn't really do much. This honestly leaves me in a pretty interesting spot because I need to be able to remove that last ice counter, and I don't really have a way to do that right now without Priscia. So I say, I'll raise your Valentina, my Valentina, at which point in time we're going to see that Persephone come in and put it back in my hand. So it can come down next turn, just not quite yet. See that I tapped my rulers wrong. I tapped the Ki Lua as opposed to the tap my Ki Lua as opposed to the Moonchild, just out of habit, knowing full well that I had Repairing the Death Scythe in hand. Just chose not to cast it. Just did not tap properly. Sitting on Memory of Worlds. A Valentina I can cast. I don't know why I put the Valentina in the RFG. He didn't use Memory of Worlds. Ren did not use Memory of Worlds. Ren used Persephone, so that Valentina should be in my hand, not the RFG. top decks into a Scheherazade, which is huge here. Could buy into an Imul, start applying a stat neg to the board. Would put red in a position to be able to start recycling sort of progressions again. The question for Ren is, does that Scheherazade get anything of value here? Now, the Imul that comes in would be a 10-10. I'm saying, before I make any decisions, let's go ahead and see as much of a dig as I can get. We see a spinning Aqua Soul, but there is a sort of progression in the grave. So we certainly could get sort of progression. Do have to watch out for trying to contract here, because ultimately it wouldn't do you much good if I have a Divine Lightning and we kind of be wasting the card of the turn, although it would cantrip. So we do decide to use Spinning Aqua Soul to grab back Generate Replicants. Interesting choice. And we're going to go ahead and cast the Generate Replicant. Grabbing a Persephone would be good here. Oh no, it wouldn't be great. I mean, you could destroy... Grabbing the Persephone to destroy the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom and then drawing a card would honestly be pretty solid here, because it gives him one less thing for me. Like, it still takes it off the board as something that I could take back. Like, if I do manage to kill the Valentina, then I suddenly, like, well, I still won't be able the ability to stop your searching. So a Persephone would be really solid card to grab here. Ren ultimately deciding to grab the Replicant Scheherazade that we put on the bottom of the deck. So all in all, spending the same amount of will, because it's one for, as we would have had to pass for the Replicant Scheherazade, and then we're going to go grab the Imul at this point. So a little bit of a roundabout. Oh, no, does go for the Scarlet here. Interesting. I feel like the Imul would have been better here to at least apply that -4/-4, gain some more life. Scheherazade's going to tuck a card face down. We're going to go ahead and call Stone. Now we have 2 darkness sources here, so with the Imul, it would be, being able to set up a -8 certainly puts Ren in a position to be able to keep control of this board for quite a bit of time. Choosing to attack it with the Valentina first, which I think was a little bit of a misstep. We're going to go ahead and flash in the Rogue Spectator. Again, this is one of the reasons why not worrying about grabbing the Scarlet instead of the Imul kind of sequence this poorly. So we can block. After the damage is dealt, we're going to go ahead and do Divine Lightning to shoot it for 800 damage, which will kill it and then give me everything back. And so this is one of the reasons why, again, utilizing the Imul might have been better here, just in general. Goes to swing in with a Scarlet, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense here. When he goes to swing with the Scarlet, we'll go ahead and just block with the Alice, who has those pumped up symbol seals, because again, back on my side of the field. End of the turn, we're going to go ahead and play a Bastet. Now we could use this to play the Pumpkin Witch again next turn, but ultimately we make the decision to grab the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom back, which I think was a mistake for not just finishing the game off. I feel like we feel pretty comfortable with the fact that we're gonna win here, but Witch of the Fallen Kingdom gets us a Pointy Hat Witch. We're now swinging for, I think, all in all, I think it's 31 damage represented on board. Each witch is 4. Pumpkin Witch is 3, so that's 11. Bastet is 4, 15. Priscia is 7 for 22. And then Alice is a cat, so getting pumped by Bastet is going to be a 34. So 34 damage currently represented on board here, with one little blocker that we can try to spot remove out of the way. But unfortunately, you see the hand is a lot of cancel stuff and not much else. So we're not even going to go worry about calling stone. We're just going to go straight into awakening a repairing the Death Scythe here to try to draw into something else. See if maybe we have some way to have swiftness. This is one of the reasons why if I had saved the Pumpkin Witch, it might have just been better overall, because I could have recast the Pumpkin Witch on my turn, go into repairing the Death Scythe, everything has swiftness and flying, and then we just kill you, especially when Ren is fully tapped out. Ren has no cards left in hand. So Death Scythe rebooted coming into play here. Swing in for 12 in the air. Down to 28. 7 in the air. Or 7 on the ground. Chooses not to block. The Memory of Worlds, like this setup, if he does happen to draw into Sword of Progression, is still pretty good, because we can let him go ahead and contract, and then when Sword of Progression, when Chrono Gear Genesis tries to like recover its block, we just use the Lorite to cancel it. And Ren just truly has just the one card. So swinging in with the Pumpkin Witch and then passing the turn, knowing we're gonna have the lethal on board next turn. We see there is a Persephone being played there, so we're safe to be able to prevent that with Lorite. Ultimately, let's just decide to pass the turn there. So we go, at the end of your turn, just to put an extra thing on board. Oh, no. Thinking about using the Persephone. Gonna try to shoot something. That's why we have that Lorite. But we don't even need to do that because we can use Bastet to give it barrier by banishing a stone, which is really nice. So does not successfully draw a card. And then just to put more bodies on board, we're going to go ahead and slam down the 2-drop Allosaurus that can remove all of the ice counters. We don't get any value off of it, so we're actually going to name, I think we still name ice counters even though we don't get any value off of it, just to make sure that next turn we can possibly go into it. But at this point in time, there's so much on field that there's no way he can block it all. So that is going to be the game. Thank you guys so much. Hope you guys enjoyed it as we kind of play throughout this little final sequence here. Hope you guys enjoyed this match. It was a great chance to be able to play. Huge thanks to Ren for sitting down and playing the game with us and playing this matchup. Deck list will be up next week after the GP this weekend. Hope to see you all on the stream for next weekend's GP. And until next time, as this closes out, this is DMO73 saying class dismissed.